The first time I saw the basement, I thought nothing of it. It was just a room below the house. Mark and I had just bought our first home together, a charming little cottage with a beautiful garden. He was everything I ever wanted. Handsome, attentive, and incredibly protective. He loved me so fiercely, he would say, that he couldn't stand the thought of being apart from me. He started to slowly push my friends and family away, telling me they were jealous of our love. He said he was all I would ever need. At the time, it felt so romantic. I was so in love, so sure of our perfect future, that I let him build a beautiful world for just the two of us. A world that was in reality, a cage. The day everything changed, it was a normal Tuesday. I was doing laundry when Mark came up behind me and put a cloth over my mouth. The world went dark, and the next thing I knew, I was waking up in the very room I had barely noticed. The room below. It was a small, concrete space with a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. There were no windows. I was terrified, confused, and filled with a sense of betrayal so profound it shattered my reality. He wasn't the man I loved. He was a monster, and he had been living in my home for months. Life in that room became a blur of days and nights, a never-ending cycle of terror and despair. I lost track of time. I lost track of who I was. The days blurred into weeks, and the weeks blurred into months. He would come down every day, sometimes charming, sometimes angry, a perfect reflection of the two sides of him I now knew. He would tell me he loved me, that he was protecting me from the world, and that this was the only way for us to be together forever. My world, my universe, became the four cold concrete walls of that room. But even in the darkness, a flicker of light remained. My mind became my sanctuary. I would close my eyes and walk through the streets of my old neighborhood, remembering the faces of my friends, the scent of the bakery, the feeling of the sun on my skin. I would replay old memories, not of him, but of a life I had before he came into it. I would remember the feel of the rain, the sound of my mother's voice, the simple freedom of a walk in the park. These memories were my weapons against the slow, suffocating erosion of my mind. He was a careful monster. He had sealed the basement door, making it soundproof. I tried screaming at first, but the sound was swallowed by the concrete walls. I learned to be quiet. I learned to be patient. I learned that my physical body might be a prisoner, but my mind, my spirit, was still my own. I started to look for an opportunity, a moment of carelessness on his part, a crack in his armor. I was a survivor, not a victim. The moment of escape came on a night when he was drinking heavily. He came down to the basement, his movements clumsy, his words slurred. He left the heavy, steel door unlocked. He left it unlocked for a few moments as he went to get something. Those moments were my only chance. My heart hammered in my chest, a drum of fear and a drum of pure, unadulterated hope. I waited for him to go upstairs, a ghost in the shadows. He locked the door behind him, but he didn't realize that he had left the key in the lock on the inside. My hands shook as I unlocked it, my fingers fumbling with the unfamiliar key. I crept out into the darkness of the house, a world that now felt alien to me. I found the front door and ran. I ran until my legs gave out, until I found a house with a porch light on. The woman who opened the door was the first face I had seen that wasn't his in what felt like a lifetime. The police came and he was arrested. But the story doesn't end there. The trauma of being in that room, the trauma of the loss of my old life, is a wound that is still healing. I still have trouble with small spaces. The sound of a key turning in a lock can send me into a panic. The journey to reclaim my identity has been the hardest part of all. But with every step I take, I remember that I survived. I remember that my mind, my spirit, was never a prisoner. The man I thought I loved built a beautiful world for us. But the truest, most profound freedom I have ever felt was when I walked out of that room below and into the world. A survivor, not a victim, ready to build my own life on my own terms. The first time I left an abusive man, I thought that was the end of my nightmare. I was 27, with a daughter and a broken spirit. But I was proud of myself. Proud that I walked away. Proud that I got out before it killed me. My ex never laid a hand on my child, but he crushed me slowly until I didn't recognize the woman in the mirror. When I left, I promised my daughter two things. We would never go back, and I'd never let anyone hurt us again. It took a few years to feel human again. I was focused on therapy, building a new life and raising her. Then came Daniel, a quiet, kind man who made everything feel safe again. He had a steady job, calm voice, good manners. My daughter liked him. He didn't raise his voice, didn't drink, didn't get in my space. He felt like the answer to all the chaos I'd escaped. We dated for a year, then married in a small ceremony. I remember crying that day, not out of joy, but because I truly believed I'd finally made the right choice. The change came slowly, not like my ex, no shouting, no bruises, no drama. Daniel's darkness was silent. He became more controlling. He didn't want my daughter wearing leggings. Said she was getting older now, and boys were looking. At first, I thought he was just being protective. But then he started closing her door behind him, spending longer and longer having talks with her. She began to shrink around him, avoid eye contact, refused to be left alone with him. When I asked, she said, "I don't like how he hugs me." My blood went cold. I confronted him. He acted offended, said I was poisoning my daughter against him, said I was too broken to trust anyone. I believed him for a moment, because that's what survivors do. We question ourselves before we question the monster. Then one night, I woke up around 2 a.m. His side of the bed was empty. I walked down the hall and found her door slightly open, and there he was, sitting at the edge of her bed, touching her hair. She was frozen, wide-eyed, and that was all I needed. I screamed. He ran. I called the police. My daughter broke down in the officer's arms, telling them what he'd done, how long it had been happening. I'll never forget the way she looked at me like, "Why didn't you protect me?" He was arrested that night, charged with multiple counts of child sexual abuse. Convicted. He's in prison now, 20 years. But I still live with the weight, the guilt, the sick irony that I left one abuser and unknowingly married another worse. Some nights, I sit in my daughter's room while she sleeps. She's stronger than I ever was, braver than she should have had to be. We're healing, but I still see the damage when she flinches at unexpected sounds or avoids eye contact with men. I tell this story because someone needs to hear it. It's not always the man with a temper. Sometimes it's the one with the gentle tone and perfect manners. And sometimes the devil wears a wedding ring. My world with Liam was a never-ending cycle of sunshine and storms. One minute, he would be the kindest, most thoughtful man in the world. He would shower me with affection, tell me I was the most beautiful and brilliant woman he had ever met. He would surprise me with my favorite flowers and cook me dinner. He was my prince, and those moments felt so real, so perfect, that I would forget everything else. But then, without warning, a quiet monster would appear. A single word, a look, a tiny misstep on my part would turn him cold. He would shut down, giving me the silent treatment for days. He would make subtle, cutting remarks about my clothes, my friends, my intelligence. He would make me feel like I was the source of his unhappiness, that if I could only be better, he would go back to being the man I loved. I spent years walking on eggshells. I became an expert at reading his moods, at anticipating his every whim. My identity became a reflection of his emotional state. If he was happy, I was happy. If he was withdrawn, I was filled with a desperate anxiety, trying to figure out what I had done wrong. I lost myself in the process. The woman who once had her own opinions, her own passions, her own friends was gone. I was just a ghost, living in a house of constant tension. It wasn't a single event that broke me. It was the slow, steady erosion of my self-worth. One day, after a particularly cruel bout of the silent treatment, I looked in the mirror and I didn't recognize the person staring back at me. Her eyes were filled with sadness. Her posture was slumped, and she looked so tired. It was then that I realized that the good Liam and the bad Liam were the same person. The prince and the monster were a single being. Leaving was the hardest thing I have ever done. It wasn't because of a punch or a shove. It was because of the trauma bond one had with him. I was addicted to the cycle. I was addicted to the relief that came when he finally forgave me. But I knew that if I stayed, I would disappear completely. I am now in a place where I am learning to trust my own feelings again. I am learning that my worth is not dependent on someone else's approval. The years of living with a quiet monster left deep scars, but I am finally healing. The silence of my new home is no longer terrifying. It is a profound and beautiful peace. When I met David, he was everything I thought I wanted. He was handsome, charismatic, and had a confident swagger that made me feel safe. He was so protective of me, always making sure I was okay, always checking in. At first, I thought it was sweet, a sign of how deeply he cared. Looking back now, I see it for what it was. The first thread of a web of control he was meticulously weaving around me. The first time it happened, it was so minor I barely even registered it. We were having an argument about something trivial, and in a flash of anger, he shoved me against the wall. The impact wasn't hard, but it was enough to take my breath away. In the stunned silence that followed, he saw the fear in my eyes and his anger instantly dissolved into panic. He fell to his knees, wrapping his arms around me, his body shaking with what looked like genuine remorse. "Oh my God, Sarah. I am so sorry. I would never hurt you. I don't know what came over me. I love you so much," he cried, and I, desperate to believe him, wrapped my arms around him and told myself it was an accident. The apologies were always so convincing, so heartfelt. He would bring me flowers, write me love letters, and promise me that it would never, ever happen again. For a few weeks, he would be the man I fell in love with, and I would cling to those moments, convinced that the person who hurt me was not the real David. That was the cycle. The tense build-up, the outburst of violence, and the intense remorse that felt like love. The more intense the violence became, the more intense the apology that followed, and I, in my naive hope, was hooked on the idea that the good times were the real us. But the violence became a pattern. The shoves became slaps. The slaps became punches. He started hitting me where the bruises wouldn't show, on my back or my stomach. He would always say it was my fault, that I was the one who made him angry. "Why did you have to provoke me?" he would yell, his finger pointed inches from my face. I started to believe him. I began walking on eggshells, monitoring every word I said, every move I made, in a desperate attempt to keep the peace. The house was no longer a home. It was a minefield, and I was in a constant state of alert. My friends noticed. They saw the way I flinched when he raised his voice, the long-sleeved shirts I wore in the summer. They begged me to leave, but I was so isolated and so full of shame. I couldn't bring myself to tell them the truth. I had invested so much in this relationship, and admitting it was a failure felt like admitting my own failure. The physical pain was terrible, but the emotional pain of the isolation and the shame was what truly trapped me. The breaking point came one night after I dropped a plate while doing the dishes. He flew into a rage, screaming at me, grabbing me by the hair, and slamming my head into the kitchen counter. I saw stars, but when the haze cleared, I saw myself in the reflection of the microwave door. My lip was bleeding, my eyes were wide with terror, and in that moment, I realized I was looking at a stranger. The person staring back at me wasn't the strong, independent woman I used to be. She was a shell of a person, living in fear. I knew that night that if I didn't leave, I would die. It wasn't a sudden burst of courage. It was a slow, quiet terror that finally outweighed the fear of leaving. I waited until he was asleep, packed a small bag, and left. The silence of the night was the most terrifying sound I had ever heard, but it was also the first time in years I had heard the sound of my own thoughts. The journey to heal has been long and difficult. For a long time, I couldn't trust anyone. I was haunted by the memories of the physical pain and the emotional manipulation. But with every day, I am rebuilding. The bruises have faded, the scars have healed, and I have found the courage to speak my truth. I have learned that love is not meant to be a weapon. It is not meant to hurt. It is not meant to be a prison. And the most important relationship you will ever have is the one you have with yourself. I am finally truly free. I always told myself I wasn't greedy. I was a simple person who just wanted a simple life. When I met Mark, he seemed to share that philosophy. He was a professional, a financial advisor who promised to handle our money. "Don't you worry about a thing, Anna," he'd say. "I'll take care of us. I'll take care of you." It sounded so romantic, so secure. I was happy to let him take the lead. At first, it was subtle. He would ask me to give him my paycheck, explaining that he would put it all into our shared account to manage it better. I didn't question it. We were a team, after all. He would give me a weekly allowance for groceries and gas, and I, happy to be taken care of, thought nothing of it. But the allowance became smaller. He started questioning every purchase. A new pair of shoes for me was met with a sigh and a lecture about our budget. A coffee out with a friend was an unnecessary luxury. My life began to shrink. I couldn't buy a birthday gift for my sister without his permission. I couldn't go out for lunch without feeling guilty. My independence, the very thing I had worked so hard for, was slowly taken away from me. I had to ask permission for my own money. I was a professional woman earning a good salary, but I was living like a child with a strict parent. He wasn't just controlling my money. He was controlling my every move. The isolation was the worst part. He would convince me that my friends were bad influences, that they encouraged me to be irresponsible. I stopped seeing them. My family lived far away, and he found 100 reasons why we couldn't visit them. I was trapped in a financial and emotional prison of his making. The breaking point came when my car broke down on the side of the highway. I called him, scared and crying, and he screamed at me for not having the money to fix it. That's when I realized I didn't even have access to a credit card or a bank account. I was completely dependent on him. In that moment of utter helplessness, I finally saw the truth. He hadn't been taking care of me. He had been crippling me. The journey to leave was terrifying. I had to secretly start a new bank account, saving every spare penny I could get. I had to ask my friends for help, confessing the humiliating truth of my situation. But the moment I finally left, it was the most empowering moment of my life. I had no money, no home, and I had to start completely from scratch. But I was finally free. He had taken my money, but he had not taken my spirit. I am finally in control of my own finances, my own life, and my own heart.